Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's session. My name is Patience Matebula Ogorua. I lead inclusion and diversity for Accenture South Africa. We are excited as Accenture to be hosting this session. I'm sure you're wondering, why does Accenture continue to partner with Voices of Change? It's because the barriers to career progression, societal biases, and absence of female mentors and many other challenges remain. To drive change, organizations need to refocus ecosystem to support the development of women. Please go on mute. Voices of Change seeks to strengthen the purpose of gender equality and allow partners to share their experiences, successes, and measures that can empower women. It also allows partners to share a set of values and strengthen the value proposition for gender equality. It encourages both men and women to be at the forefront of gender equality and play a leading role. A little bit of history about these Voices of Change. The Voices of Change movement was born at the 2017 One Young World Summit when Accenture and Thomson Reuters identified an opportunity to leverage their networks and experience to create a lasting and impactful change. In 2018, Accenture partnered with Nedbank and Thomson Reuters in hosting the inaugural event. In 2019, the partnership grew and included Accenture, Nedbank, MTN, and Business Engage. Previous events took place physically, allowing us to host 200 guests in 2018 at Nedbank and 300 guests in 2019 at Empress Calais. Due to COVID-19 restrictions, the 2020 event took place virtually, allowing us to host over 1,500 guests. The 2021 event hosted over 5,000 guests online, and in the same year, Voices of Change broke a partner record with about 15 partners joining the movement. In 2022, the movement grew even bigger, with monthly growth session hosting inspiring leaders sharing their experience in the workplace. The partnership continued to thrive in 2023 with the online Voices of Change main event hosting 7,820 people in August. This occasion provided a platform to celebrate the remarkable achievement of women while engaging in insightful discussions about pivotal actions required to enact meaningful change within our communities and beyond. In 2025, Accenture is excited to be kicking off the year with a roundtable discussion under the theme, Be Without Limits. This discussion will provide a platform for leaders in various industries to tap into real-life experiences and insights of their careers and how they have excelled in pushing boundaries and achieving goals or success without limits. Welcome once more to this session. Look forward to meaningful discussions. Over to you, Conrad.
Thank you very much, Ms. Patience Matebula. Welcome, everyone, to today's roundtable discussion on how to succeed as a woman in a male-dominated workplace. It is an honor to facilitate with four remarkable business leaders who have made significant strides in their respective industries. Today, we will delve into your experiences, insights, and strategies for overcoming barriers and achieving success. Our esteemed panelists are Ms. Boitumelo Moroe, Ms. Trinity Ncala, Ms. Edna Eason, and Ms. Celeste Koert, who will share their joint journeys and provide valuable advice on navigating and thriving within environments where gender biases often prevail. This discussion will aim to inspire and empower women to break boundaries and embrace limitless possibilities in their careers. So I will give a bit of background for our audience. First, we have Ms. Boitumelo Moroe, a seasoned businesswoman with a robust background in economics and corporate finance. Boitumelo is the founder of ECU Express and Bosch Car Service FMC. She currently serves as the Vice Chairperson of the RMI Motor Industry Workshop Association, or MIWA, and Central Region. She's also a passionate advocate for South African economic and social political progress through her NPO, Rising Generation Foundation, correction. Boitumelo's journey exemplifies the dynamic potential at the intersection of economics and technology, marking her as a notable leader of her generation. So welcome, Boitumelo.
Thank you, Koert.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Trinity Ncala, arguably South Africa's top human resources executive with over 20 years of experience. Trinity is the founder of the T&T Academy, an HR firm specializing in recruitment, enterprise development, training, and HR consulting. She is also a part-time commissioner with the CCMA and various bargaining councils, and a co-author of the book, If It's Not Growing, It Is Dead. Trinity's versatile and visionary leadership has earned her numerous awards, including Businesswoman of the Year and Top Young Woman Entrepreneur. Welcome, Ms. Trinity Ncala.
Thank you, Koert.
We then lead on to our panelist, Ms. Edna Eason, Accenture's technology business in South Africa, which Edna leads, which focuses on partnering with clients on large-scale business and IT transformation programs using the latest technologies in cloud, security, data, AI, Industry X, enterprise platforms, and intelligent automation, which is used to build and run technology that contributes to the agility and cyber resilience of organizations. With 30+ years of consulting experience, Edna has worked extensively with large organizations in both the public and private sectors. She is passionate about her family, her Yorkie Terrier, Formula One, and keeping orchids alive. Welcome, Edna.
Thank you, Koert. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. And then, lastly, we also are thrilled to introduce Celeste Koert, who brings over 20 years of experience in digital customer transformation. Celeste has a proven track record of building and scaling digital businesses and has led high-performing digital customer teams across Africa. Her expertise spans multiple industries, including banking, telecoms, retail, energy, and mining. With a focus on digital design and product innovation, marketing excellence, service transformation, and sales effectiveness. Celeste's passions for technology and data-led digital customer transformation, combined with her visionary approach, ensures that innovation and strategic thinking drive meaningful connections and lasting impact within the digital landscape. Welcome, Ms. Celeste Koert.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. We're going to kick off today's session with a few questions around table, and I'm going to pose my first question to Ms. Boitumelo Moroe. What role do leaders play in creating environments where all people feel supported and without limits?
All right. I think firstly, let's break it down and analyze what does it mean to be without limits, right? To be without limits means you should have a consistent mentality to conquer, no matter what obstacles come your way. It means you need to have the resilience to be able to overcome any challenge, even in the face of rejection. It means you need to be able to push yourself outside of boundaries or to see yourself excelling in areas which you think were not possible, and to step outside of your comfort zone. So from those points which I've addressed, the main thing is there needs to be a mentality shift within the individual first.
Yeah.
Once that has happened, then as a leader, you can step in and support the person. How can we support the person? We can support the individual by firstly nurturing them. You can nurture them through guidance, support, mentorship. As a leader, we've already paid our school fees, and I'm a firm believer of it's not necessary for somebody under you to pay the same school fees. Guide them, mentor them so that they don't make the same mistake. Secondly, let's empower them. How do we empower them? Through opportunities, through training, and perhaps where appropriate, let's give them some bit of delegation. If we delegate, we know that we give them a bit of autonomy and freedom. And at the end of the day, the organization will also benefit. Fourth, I would also like to mention, we need to create a space whereby people feel safe and also build trust. Once that has been established, we will be able to have open communication. There will be dialogue, and we'll also be able to create an environment where ideas, creativity, and innovation comes to play.
I absolutely love that. Trusting someone, guiding and mentoring them, and giving them that umbrella within to operate. And exactly to your point, you've paid your school fees. So it's about handing the reins over and allowing someone to explore the opportunities for themselves as well. Powerful. Thank you very much. I'd love to hear from our panelists in terms of what role leaders do play in creating environments where people do feel supported without any limits.
I think just to add on what Boitumelo has said, where there is open communication, where there's trust, you'll be surprised that even as a leader, there are people that you're leading, but that can bring innovative way to grow the environment or the business even further by just mere opening that communication and making them trust you. So I think it's very important. It's like we're a team. It's not more I'm a boss and whatever that I say, it goes. It's to say there's a driver, but there's nothing wrong with the passenger to say, actually, we can turn left. It's a short way to where we're going.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think it must that openness, that communication, that trust that she's talking about.
Definitely that umbrella of trust. And I love how you're reinforcing empowerment, communication, trust,
Yes.
and a supportive culture, really, in terms of being supported without limits.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts from our panelists before we move on? Okay, let's move on to our next question. And my next question is going to be for Ms. Edna Eason. Can you share pivotal moments in your personal or professional life where you embrace the idea of being without limits?
Sure, Conrad. I was actually listening to Boitumelo answer, and I was thinking, gosh, I think it makes me think of this specifically age. I think I was about 10 years into my career. So I think I was a senior manager, and I was actually leading a pitch that we were doing, to get a new client. And whilst I'd done a lot of business development work before, the work that we were pitching for was something I hadn't done before. And as we were going through the proposal, I think I was very fortunate to work with a director who was a really good mentor. And she said to me, that she wants us to propose that I lead this project. But it had not been something that I had done before. So for me, it was like quite intimidating and, classic, imposter syndrome type story. I really didn't feel like I was really ready for it. But, I was willing to, take a step of faith and do that. But the story really evolves in that, the proposal was well accepted, and we moved on to do preparation for orals. We had to present orals to this new client or this new potential client. And the night before, we were late at the office. We were all preparing our relevant sections, making sure that we were ready. And one of the senior leaders at the time in the organization, who's no longer with us, but came down to do some reviews of the work that we were doing. And he realized that I was being proposed as the person to lead, this program. And his comment, was that, but Edna's never done this before. We're sure that she's the right person to do this. And obviously that made me feel like really small. And, if you couple that with, the potential self-doubt that I already had at the time, I was like, I came out of that meeting thinking, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into? And I just went away and I continued to prepare for it, etc. Because, I'm fortunate working with somebody who really believed that I could do it. And one of the other leaders at the time came and sat with me and said, let's just review your story and what you're actually saying, and that person worked with me to make sure that we really brought out the right points, etc. And, at the end of that evening, I had the decision to make, was I going to really, I think, stand on the belief of the people around me that believed in me, or listen to the doubting voices, whether they be other people or my own. And for me, it was really a pivotal moment, to come in the next day, lead the sessions, present. We were successful. We won the deal. We then delivered the program, and it was like, I don't know, it was like somewhere well over 100 people in the program. So it was a real stretching experience for me. But for me, I always remember that, time where, despite the imposter syndrome that we all have at a certain time, despite other voices around, I could borrow the belief of the people around me who believed in me, to take that step forward. So that's something that, comes to mind.
Fantastic. I mean, showing the courage to grow within that level of adversity and having the perseverance to pull it through, and knowing, to your point, feeling as if you have imposter syndrome, but at the same time knowing that you can deliver this. That's a powerful example of really being without limits. Thank you, Ms. Edna Eason. Let me open the question to our panelists. In any pivotal moments in your personal or professional life where you've embraced the idea?
I think mine is similar to yours. Also, I think about 10 years in my leadership journey, I think took a lift, and I entered the boardroom for the first time. And as I reflect back on that journey, it was a boardroom that was male dominated. I think we had about 2 females at the table, but there was no one else that looked like me.
Yes.
And so I struggled with finding my voice at the table. And when I had the opportunity, it was like because I am that creative, innovative person that would ask, well, why are we doing it this way? Isn't there a different way or better way of doing this? I was looked upon like, where does that come from? And so I had huge imposter syndrome, and I felt, many times, why am I at this table? But I was fortunate in that one of the others, I think, could tap into how I was feeling, took me aside, and then worked with me, as in took me by the hand and worked with me to help me find my seat at the table as well as my voice at the table, right? And therein lies a lesson that creating the opportunities at that table, but also giving your team, your next level leadership team, and the people in your team who may be struggling with exactly the same thing, creating the spaces and the opportunities for people to find their voice.
Fantastic. And I think it's truly a liberating story to understand that, like you say, you walked into that boardroom and there weren't others like you there, and you still found the courage to step forward and say, I have some transformative ideas that I want to share with you. And then being accepting to that mentorship to say, I have areas of development that I'm opening the door to so that others can provide me that input and growth opportunity. Thank you, Celeste. Very empowering. Let me ask a question of Ms. Trinity Ncala. Embracing limitless possibilities often involves courage. Can you share a moment where you had to step out of your comfort zone, and how did that impact your journey?
I think the the example that I can share is that when I completed my degree, the next step for me was to obviously get a job in corporate and start working like other people that I went to university with. But unfortunately, it did not work out like that. So the comfort would be to get into corporate and get people that teach you that you have a degree. This is your position. This is how you're expected to work and get training, get mentorship, guidance, coaching, and all that. But unfortunately, with me, I completed my degree. I did not get a job. So I had to then decide whether I was going to sit and say, I am part of the stats of the unemployed, or I was going to do something about it. So this is how I started the recruitment company. Initially, it was just one element of business. It was not a fully fledged HR company. It was just the recruitment part. So I started the recruitment part, and it was quite uncomfortable, if I can put it that way. I've never been in corporate. I've only been at school, and now I have to engage with people in corporate without prior, engagement before. And I had to really believe in myself and say, going back to what you both of you spoke about, and say, well, you just think, am I going to do it? You get into a room, you're sitting with the HR manager, sometimes an HR director, and you're just fresh from school, and all you did is just figure out what to do. You just understand that I have a business, I need to sell skill to a company, and I have to sit there. There were big recruitment companies at the time. It's before it was even saturated. And you have to try to sell and say, out of all these companies, I'm the best person that you can use for the skills that you're looking for as a company. But I remember I used to remind myself that you have brains. You've passed your matric, you've passed your degree, you've passed your honors, you've graduated twice, you can do this. Yes, maybe you've been to interviews that did not, for whatever reasons, they didn't think you're good enough. I don't know where their reasons, but you are good enough. You can do this. You've already started. You have your brains. You have your little mini dining room. You have a computer at a time, and you can do this. And really, my positive mentality, because I'm a very positive person. It's not easy to really make me feel small. You really have to work hard to make me feel like that. So that's how. And I said, I can do this. Yeah, and I know that I think in 2 years' time, we had because I was with a partner, a turnover of about 11 million at a time. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's why I was not tired. There was a bigger picture for me. So
Yes.
yeah, I'm very courageous. Like I'm saying, you really have to work hard. Even a no when I leave some of the clients, it did not make me feel like I'm not good enough. I understood that it's a no, and another door, there would be a yes.
It's got to keep going.
Yeah, you gotta keep going.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that believe that impossible is just a word. Yeah, nothing is impossible. You can achieve. You just set your mind on it, and you can do it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, your story exemplifies the value of believing in yourself,
Yes.
taking the path less traveled
Yes.
when other opportunities are not necessarily available to you, and really exploring those, having the
Yes.
courage to
Yeah.
grow as an individual and say, I am going to find my path and my destiny, and not allowing hindrances to stop you.
Precisely.
Fantastic, absolutely.
Just to add, when I passed my matric, my mother-in-law, but she was not my mother-in-law, right? She got me, because I was a baby. Yeah, so she got me a card, a congratulation card, and I remember to date that said that the sky is the limit. And I decided to change that wording to say, not even the sky is going to be the limit. So I've held to that to date.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah,
That is inspiring.
thank you.
There are no limits.
Yeah.
Question for our panelists. Do any of you also have a moment of when you had to step out of your comfort zone, and how did that impact your journey?
Well, I think for me was stepping outside of corporate finance, because I've been in corporate finance before, branching out to start my own businesses. And I mean, like, I enjoyed the rewards and the perks that came with it. However, there was a greater need for autonomy, and that is what led me to actually branch out and start my own business. And with that being said, I was going into a male-dominated industry, whereby probably I wasn't as knowledgeable as the other people. But if anything, just as you said, your positivity, your determination will get you there. And I had that, and I held on to it, right? I made sure when I would enter into any boardroom, I was prepared. I was just as good as the next male was next to me, who's been in the industry longer than me. Other than that, you make sure you actually couple yourself with a lot of industry people who will give you insight, will give you wisdom, and you'll be fine.
Empowering.
Yeah, true.
Very true, very true. And I love again how you say, you're equal. There is no differentiation in the mindset, in the skill set, in the drive and determination. You are equal. That is absolutely inspiring. Thank you. Let me ask a question of Ms. Celeste Koert. As someone who has embraced the mindset of being without limits, how do you actively support people to do the same?
So I think, let me first be my authentic self and perhaps share a little bit about my career. I've always found myself in spaces where it's needed of me to be the business builder. Either I'm standing up a new business, or I'm leading a new team, or I'm taking a new proposition to market, or I'm building new teams. I always find myself in that space, and that's where my energy comes from. And joining Accenture, I'm exactly in the same space. So it starts with understanding your space that you're in and being real about your limits within that space, because you've got to recognize them. You've got to be clear with what it is that you need to do, where are the constraints, how do you deal with it, and then how do you lift yourself out of that to build that vision. And that's the exciting part, but it's one thing to build that vision that says, this is the path that we're going, this is what we're building, this is what the future looks like. But it's a whole other thing to get people excited about it. And because I've come through that journey with my own leadership lessons, we need to be intentional and reflective about the teams that we are building. And so, especially in spaces where you're leading large teams, you can't get to everyone, and standing up that team that is diverse with energy, with thought and with ideas, but also inclusive in their own leadership ways, so that how you lead is emulated further down across the team, so that the whole team feels that inclusive leadership culture. That's very important. Being your authentic self. If you're not open with your team, if you're not giving them insight as to who you are, where your personal challenges are. I've shared with my team some of my family struggles, some of my health struggles, some of my mental struggles. I've shared with them some by my kids, You've got to be your authentic self. So when you need help, you can also ask for help. It's a two-way street, in the same way that communication works both ways. It's the only way you get to know the people that you're leading. The moms with kids, the parents taking kids to school in the morning. Don't start meetings before 8:30 or 9, because there's something that happens in the morning. I was called out yesterday. Do not book meetings on a Friday between 12 and 2. We all know why. If someone called me out, even though I didn't set up the meeting, it's my accountability, and making sure But the same way I was mentored and coached back then, you've got to enable the structures around you to make sure that everyone receives that benefit.
Awesome. That really resonates with me, being your authentic self, showing those that you are leading that you are not on a pillar separate from them, but that you are
Human.
human.
You are
You
human.
know, you are human. You have your day-to-day life. You get up in the morning, you brush your teeth just like everyone else, and you get through the day. But that ability to really encourage and support your team and to engage with your team, even if it is a large team, is quite a powerful statement. And I'm again curious to know from our panelists, where do you find that you've actively supported people to embrace being without limits?
I think Celeste's example is being authentic is so true. I think, I think that for me really resonates as a leadership style. I think if people, I think sometimes in the industry, I think people have, they're one person at home and one person, at the office. And I think that mental energy that goes into trying to do that, it's just a waste. I think it's just not really taking advantage of people's strengths and really what they can bring. And I think, it's always so important to remember that we so much value the diversity of our teams, because if we all look the same, behave the same, talk the same, what value would we all add, right? How do you also differentiate the value that you add? So that really resonates.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
I think also understanding your team, like you're saying, you'll be having mothers probably with young children, that by creating such a team, you need a special person not to value that and not want to perform or to be maybe bring something on the table. Like you'll have high performance in other words when you do that, because nobody wants to lose that. And you have someone that will probably they will reprimand each other that you can't do this, like you can't mess this up for us. It's working. If you know that you need to be here at this time, you must be there. And just having a happy team, it helps with productivity as well. So I think it's something very good.
And it's also reflective of my earlier journey where I battled to find my space and my voice.
Yeah.
I think because I've come through that journey,
Yeah.
it's now easy to say, I know that you've just had
Yes.
this for one. How do I help? How do I assist?
Because you just want to do the best. If someone gives you that, I mean, they allow you all that, you just don't want to mess up, lack of better word. Yeah, you become productive.
Nourishing those opportunities for growth.
Yeah.
Definitely. Then that I ask my next question, and I'll pose my question for Ms. Edna Eason. What advice would you give to an early career employee who aspires to break through barriers and embrace limitless possibilities?
I think for me, I guess my first advice is always to work hard, right? Because I think, if you think you're just going to arrive at a workplace and just, grow and just, somehow progress without really, putting your best foot forward, on a daily basis and really working hard. I think, for me, it starts there. That's how I think you start to build a brand. People start to know you. They start to feel that they can trust you because that you've maybe been given a challenge and you were able to deliver on that. So I think for me it always starts with that. But secondly, I would say it really comes down to, I think, being visible and building connections, right? And I think why I say being visible is I think, in our industry, in the IT industry, very often, especially as a result of COVID and everything we've been through in the last few years, a lot of people still enjoy the flexibility of working a couple of days from home or maybe even a lot of days from home. And they're really losing out the benefits of the connections that you create within the industry, within the organizations that they work in. And also being visible, because if I reflect on my career, and maybe, you guys would say the same, we were successful in the things that we were given to achieve, that we achieved, and that we delivered. But because of that, we built maybe a brand or visibility, and people were confident to bring you onto their team, and you could take on the next challenge and the next challenge and the next challenge, and you were given other opportunities. Just because sometimes you were at the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
But people, so there's always probably an element of luck. But people knew you or came to know you, right? Whereas I think if you fall into the trap of maybe doing what's sometimes a bit more comfortable and working 3, 4, 5 days from home, I think you don't really benefit from it, because you're working with a small group of people. Maybe you work with 3 or 4 people directly. They're the ones that get to know you, but nobody outside of that team gets to know you, right? And Celeste, you and I, we can think about many times where we maybe worked on proposals and we were in the office, and we were in the office at the right time when somebody came out and said, hey, we need some help to do X, Y, Z. And through that, we took on a new opportunity, we got involved, we got more exposure, we learned, so definitely number 2, I would say, about being visible and building connections. And the third one, I think, comes back to a lot of the words that you've said in terms of being resilient.
Yeah.
Because guess what? Things will go wrong, I mean, the things that we do are challenging, and nothing works perfectly all the time. And when things go wrong, it's just to remember if you build the connections, you've got the support structure, and also just the sun will rise tomorrow. Most of what we do, we don't save lives. Okay, I know that there may be other people on the call, who maybe do, but I think when things go wrong, it's just to be able to rely on people and just remember that, tomorrow the sun will rise and we'll get through this. This too will pass, and I think those are probably the 3 things that come to mind for me. So, working hard, building connections and being visible, and, being resilient.
I love how being resilient and being adaptable and accessible is really part of your messaging there. Especially if you say, build your own strong brand, work hard. That plays a big part of it. But be accessible, being the only bright lights in a closed room won't help. So be accessible, be visible, let people know. And there is always tomorrow. Exactly to your point. We say files, not lives. So,
Wow,
I like that.
wow.
Sometimes it does feel like it, but certainly empowering message. And I'm curious to know from the rest of our panelists, if you would give an early career adopter some advice in terms of how to embrace limitless possibilities, what would you encourage?
Yeah, I think just to also add on what she's really said about recognizing your brand and supporting the brand, we need to also make sure, as obviously young professionals, that you're reliable. Reliable in terms of your time, reliable in terms of your deliverance. If you say you're going to maybe arrive at a meeting at a certain time, be there. Say something about you. If, of course, you need to submit something on time, make sure you submit it on time, even before. So be reliable and be prepared. Be prepared for any opportunity that comes your way.
Just to add in terms of reliability and all that, and I'm a big believer that you need to have a balanced life. I mean, at some point, and I know that you're big on family, you need to have time for family and all that, and your me time as well. Having said that, from the religious point of view, I normally say faith without works is dead. So it goes back to you saying you need to be a hard worker. And what Boitumelo has said as well in terms of reliability. I don't think there's anything wrong to be accessible even after your working hours. Imagine having such a team member in a team that even at 7 o'clock, I mean, if there's a need, it's not like they do it happen every day, but that you know that anytime you contact them and you need something, they'll be able. So my advice to those starting that, I would say to them, look, don't be a clock watcher. Yes, you can still have a balanced life, but be accessible. I mean, in my environment, when people that I hire in my business, are people that are flexible. And flexibility does not mean that you are going to be abused and not have time with your family. But I want, if the client calls and you say, I need a data analyst urgently, where someone is sick tomorrow, I can be able to speak to one of the recruiters and we jointly try to assist the client and have someone that can start tomorrow and have, that's the flexibility that I'm talking about. So don't be a clock watcher and don't also say, this is my job spec, you're taking me, you're learning. You're learning. Anything that you do outside what you've been employed for, look at it positively. You're learning and you're growing. So that would be really my encouragement, my guidance, my advice to those who are starting a new career.
And that's empowering because it really speaks to resilient adaptability,
Yes.
being open to opportunities,
Yeah.
communicating,
Mhm.
having a strong presence, being trusted, and of course that work-life integration. We no longer talk about the work-life balance. We talk about the integration
Yeah.
and being open to those opportunities that come knocking and say, hi, I'm here for you, opportunity. Embrace me and take me. Thank you. Very, very insightful.
When you turn the page, maybe I can add,
Please do.
early on, find yourself a coach or a mentor or support. But in my journey, it was someone that would be constructive, someone that would call out, this was well done, or you messed up.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not always someone that's going to sing you praises,
True.
but being open to learn from that coaching and take on board the learnings that come through that coaching. Ask for help.
Being responsive to guidance.
True.
Being open to it and saying, I'm here to receive guidance because without, guidance is the nourishment of the soul. And without guidance, where would you be?
Truly.
And so often, I think I know I struggled many times in my career where I would get guidance. I wouldn't take it very constructively. It's like, it felt like I was just I took it too personally. And I think it's really important to be able to hear what is being said, and take it well. And understand that it's being given for your growth, not to, make you feel small, let's say. I think it's a really important attitude. And I know I struggled with it growing up, so important.
Sorry, I just wanted to say something. I think it's because you're probably a perfectionist and you feel like you've disappointed someone. But it's not always the case. It's time to grow when you get that it could be done better.
Yes.
But I don't think it's just because you really don't want to disappoint and you thought you've done your best.
Yes.
And when you get that feedback,
Yes.
someone down. Yeah.
Yeah. Striving to be perfect. And I think that also speaks to your point earlier of taking the path less travel, being resilient and believing in yourself. And to Edna's point of be known for something, but also have trust, not just in yourself and don't just build trust in others, but have others trust that they can come to you and steer you and guide you. And sometimes that little piece of advice you get around the water cooler is the most impactful career advice that you can find. Thank you. Let me ask my next question for Ms. Boitumelo Moroe. What guidance would you offer to those who are striving to push boundaries in your field?
I think it's very similar to most of the other responses we've given, but the first thing, which is going to also touch on Trinity's point, is to say we need to have a positive mindset.
Yeah.
The only way you'll be able to live without limits or be without limits is only if you have fixed or had a shift in terms of mindset. Fully believe in yourself. Once you've done that, then everything else will follow. So that's the first piece of advice. Secondly, I'm also going to touch on Celeste's advice to say, get a mentor. It's very important to get somebody to guide you, get people to support you, because when the going gets tough, then they will be there to lift you up, right? Third, be resilient. If, of course, you are resilient, you will be able to overcome anything. Of course, there will be failures along the way. Of course, there will be people who will try to bring you down, but you need to face it with a mindset of, I'm going to overcome it. I don't know if the other ladies would like to add on that.
I can add. You know what we need to remind ourselves is that, and going to your first answer when you said it was the first time you did that, is that we need to understand that even for people that are experienced, it was the first time. So that must just give you courage that this is my first time and I'm going to excel just like they excel. I'll be an expert just like that experts. So what we need to remember is that nobody came knowing. We all had an opportunity to learn. And when you start something that you've never done before, it's your first time, just like expect A, expect B, and expect C. So that's what we need to remember. And that must give you courage that I can do it. They did it, I can do it.
And as women in leadership positions, having broken through that boardroom door, being different to those in the room, did you find possibly that creativity and innovation played a role in terms of pushing boundaries?
I'd say definitely. I mean, like, it's always good to always be ready to put your hand up.
Yeah.
So obviously that means you need to step outside of your comfort zone. That's the first step, right? And once you've done that, and as Celeste said, you will be able to also find your voice.
Yeah.
Find your voice and own it. I believe that every opportunity that comes our way was made for us.
Yeah.
That's something I firmly believe in. So you need to own it.
I love that. I mean, it's that confidence,
Yes.
that courage
Yeah.
within yourself. And
Yeah.
I think it's easy to say, have confidence, believe in yourself. And I think we all understand that that is also something that has to be nurtured and given room to grow. It's not something that you're going to wake up with on a Tuesday morning and just go ahead. So it's certainly a very powerful statement. Thank you. With that in mind, we do have a few moments open for questions from the audience, if we have the opportunity. If there's any questions online for our panelists? While we're waiting for individuals to think of some questions, I just want to say to our panelists again, I think it's been a really impactful discussion showing how, and I've listened very carefully to this conversation. And the one thing that I really enjoyed hearing was that, yes, there is acknowledgement that you are a woman in a leadership position, but most importantly, I've heard you are an individual. You have strength, you have character, you have belief in yourself. You are open to criticism, open to resilient adaptability and feedback from others, and that you are constantly seeking to nurture and grow yourselves and others at the same time, which I think really speaks to the strength of leadership. So that has been, and indeed. Right, we have questions on the line, so we're going to go first with Belinda Motshome. Belinda, you have a question for our panelists. You can go off mute.
Yes, hello everybody, and thank you very much for your vulnerable share. Real nuggets of wisdom shared today, and it's great to see when our lived experiences overlap. It really makes the rest of us feel like we're not alone in the journey. So I guess for me, it's just a question for all of you, each of you, to just share what is it that you do to keep you grounded, like offline, like to recharge and show up as the amazing women that you are today.
How do you keep grounded?
Okay.
I mean, for me, I think my faith is very important to me. So I think as a Christian, that really gives me a lot of grounding. But I have an amazingly supportive husband, really, I think he believes more in me than I believe in me, and I think he's really been with me for many, many years, fortunate enough to be married for 22 years. And, he's just fabulous. And I think for me, I love reading, for me, it's the way to switch off my brain. Otherwise, my brain doesn't switch off. So I love reading or, audible books and those types of things. That really helps to recharge. And then obviously just spending time with family. And I love my Yorkshire Terrier, as I said in the beginning, for me, it's, just spending time with family and doing those types of things. It really helps to recharge. Thanks.
For me, I'd say it's the ability to be able to live within my purpose. That's something where for a long time I wanted to be able to live within my purpose. So that keeps me grounded, knowing that I'm living within my purpose. And secondly, I'd also say to be able to know that I'm making a difference in one way or another. To be able to be an employer and know that at the end of the day, it's because of the business ideas which one has started, one is able to feed families and able to contribute to the economy of our country. That in itself keeps me grounded. Over and above family, the support of family and friends has actually carried me to where I'm at.
Thank you. Let's give our next question to Tombi on the line. Tombi, please go mute and ask your question for us.
Thank you very much. I would like to get the panel's view on the following. A lot of us, when we were growing up, were ambitious. We wanted to climb to the top. However, young people sitting on this call who are still growing their career, who are aspiring to reach the very senior executive levels that many of you may be sitting at, may not realize that it comes with a lot of pain and sometimes resilience. And what do I mean by that? That a lot of us say you need to be strong, you need to be resilient. But honestly, your strength and your resilience will be tested sometimes by leaders who are not emotionally intelligent, leaders who are not EQ, leading with EQ, etc. So how do we truly prepare young people for some of the challenges they will face from leaders that they thought they were looking up to, leaders who they had hoped would inspire them? And when their understanding of resilience and strength is truly challenged, how do you tell that young person, don't throw the towel in, stick it out? Because their soul is being destroyed every time they go to work. They don't feel like waking up and going to work, but we know that there is a lesson in every single experience and they need to stick it out. How do you encourage those young people who don't truly understand that the journey at the top will really test your understanding of strength and resilience and what they must do to make sure that they don't walk away? Thank you.
I'll take this one.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be completely honest in my answer. In my career, I have walked away from spaces where I felt it does not serve my purpose. Right? And I'm honest about it. In some spaces, I have been in boardrooms before where I simply felt that the space that I'm in does not lead to my purpose and what it is that I needed to do. I could not have come through that journey and made those decisions without having the coach, the mentor, and support around me to help me in working through the turmoil, the anxiety, the being clear on purpose and what it is that you want for yourself, and being intentional about in your own career, being selfless in the decisions that we make along the way. Having said that, when we in the trenches and in those tough spaces, the realization that you're never alone in that journey, and there's always a support system around you to help you navigate through that turmoil or through that odd experience, that is important. And I shared with Edna, when I started my career at Accenture, I'm back at Accenture now, I went through early motherhood and I couldn't cope, having a young family and all of that. But working through that and coming to the realization, even though this is the absolute best space that I would want to build my career in, at that time, it was not the best space for me. So being armed with support and being armed with people who understand your purpose, your journey, what it is that you need to do, it's either you get through that anxiety through coaching and counseling, or you end up having to leave the space, and that's okay. But don't beat yourself up if you come to the realization that that is not the best space for you to be in at that point in time.
That's well captured.
Very well captured. And I think a very good note to end off. And I appreciate that we have quite a few more questions on the line, but we are cognizant that we are out of time. So let's close it off and say thank you very much to our panelists, Ms. Boitumelo Moroe, Ms. Trinity Ncala, Ms. Edna Eason, and Ms. Celeste Koert. Thank you very much for sharing your time, your guidance, and your insights with us today, and certainly talking about how you can be without limits. Thank you so very much for your attendance today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.